It's 93.3 WMMR right here in Philadelphia. I'm Nick McIlwain of the Preston and Steve Show. I am joined by Matt Quinn and Sam Cooper, lead vocalist and guitar from the band Mountjoy. Welcome, guys. Thank you for joining us here on MMR.
Hello. Thank you for having us.
I want to start and I want to talk to you guys about several things. We're very excited that you're coming and you're going to be playing the Skyline stage at the Man on September 10th. You are opening up for Dave Matthews Band at the Gorge in Labor Day weekend, this weekend, right outside of Seattle, Washington, or a couple hours outside of Seattle, Washington. And on top of all of that, the three of us went to the same high school. I went to Conestoga High School. I'm a little older than you guys. I graduated in 1993, but I've been aware of you guys for quite some time, and I'm very excited to be able to talk to you today. So, Matt, let's start with you. I'd love to get MMR listeners a little more familiar with the band, with Mountjoy. And so you grew up in our area. You grew up outside of Philadelphia. Near where I grew up, and Conestoga High School is in Berwyn, PA. The band itself is named after a mountain, quote unquote mountain, in Valley Forge called Mountjoy. So tell our listeners and our viewers here on this Zoom a little bit about Mountjoy and how you guys got started.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably best suited to know what the Mountjoy thing is about. We get that question a lot, but I know you're from where we're named after. So, Sam and I, grew up in the Philadelphia area. And sort of the shortest version of the story, at least, is that we ended up in LA after college together and, had made music together while we were out in Philly for a long time. And it was sort of an obvious thing to get back together and make some music. And just obviously had some good fortune that, some of the songs we made while we were out in LA resonated with people, and here we are. I mean, it's been a crazy journey in between, but that's pretty much the skinny.
Sam, when did you move to Los Angeles, and at what point in time did you start working with Matt and realizing that this could be not only a record but a possible music career?
Yeah, I mean, Matt and I had worked together like in high school. I remember Matt was 2 years younger than me, but he was writing these songs that were like really great for like a 14-year-old. I remember hearing him and being like, oh my God, this is pretty cool. And then, we just kind of kept in touch and would send each other songs throughout college. He went to school in Boston. I went to school in New York. And then we both ended up in LA on our own. And there was a moment we put a song called Astroban on Spotify and it did pretty well. And there was just a moment of like, okay, like it's doing well. Should we like try and like really do this? I mean, we'd done music our whole lives, but like, should we actually like really do this? And I just figured I would regret it my whole life if I didn't at least see it through and see what happens. So what the hell,
I have a friend named Michael Carnaccia, and he went to USC and he graduated from Conestoga as well. And he's an actor. And I think about actors and musicians and even like professional athletes. Like there's a point in your time, probably early 20s where you think, I'm pretty good at this, or the guys that I'm working with are pretty good at this. I think that maybe I can find work doing it, but to turn it into a career, to turn it into a life, takes commitment and then some luck and then finding an audience and making sure that the content that you're putting out is what you want it to be. So I'm sure there were times where, especially when you live in LA and you're sort of in the hubbub of all that, you're like, we're not quite sure it's going to actually have some success. And then it starts gaining some traction. So would you guys, Matt, would you think that was like around 2016, 2017, that era?
Yeah. In the beginning, I feel like you don't know what success or what the metrics are that are going to lead to success. So it was really hard. It was also the beginning, really. We didn't know it at the time, but it was the beginning really of the, sort of influence of some of these streaming apps, Spotify being one of them. And, maybe it was hard because you would look at it and you'd say, okay, we got 1 million streams, but you didn't really have anything to base that on. It's just this amazing number, but, playlisting had become a thing. Which was this like idea that you could get a song, that sort of was, kind of like radio, I guess. It's sort of like the streaming equivalent of radio. So it was unclear what it would mean. We couldn't look to other artists that had this happen. So we were kind of flying blind in the beginning, in terms of we had these metrics, we didn't know what they meant. And, I think at that point, it was like Sam said, it was like, well, maybe we don't have enough information to know that, it wasn't the typical, radio hit or something like that, where you say like, oh, other bands that have had this have had huge success. But we had something, and we've been working so hard for so long to have anything, that it felt like it was worth going for. And, I think your friend who's an actor could probably tell you this too, is like, no matter what level you're at, it always feels like maybe you should turn back to something else. It's always, it's sort of an industry that feels like it has a trap door for a floor at all times. But I think eventually you just get comfortable with the sort of uncertainty of it. And that's part of it. That's part of the thrill.
I work at a radio station, and I've worked here for 20 some odd years. And I think that the parallels between streaming services and streaming services and radio stations are pertinent, because you can find out about a band, but it might not necessarily get airtime. It might not, but here we are, the three of us, having a conversation, and this is going to be on my social media and on WMMR.com, and something we can talk about on the radio in the morning on the Preston and Steve show. And so it's still word of mouth, right? And so in 94, perhaps something along those lines, when you guys might not have even been born yet, I remember getting a bootleg CD of this new band, Dave Matthews Band. And I was like, oh, I kind of like these guys. It's a neat little jam. It sort of spoke to me. And it was even before Under the Table and Dreaming came out. And that was word of mouth stuff. That was friends introducing me to a new band that they thought that I might like. And when I think about Mount Joy now, I think about like, this is a band that I like. I want to talk about them. I'm in a position at a radio station where I can, and hopefully help a little bit, and I'm not saying that to toot my own horn. I want people to know about you guys because I like you guys, and I want other people to find out about them as well, which is why I want to have this conversation in the first place. So flash forward to this weekend, you guys are going to be opening for Dave Matthews Band at a legendary venue called the Gorge, which is in Washington State. Sam, you and I were chatting a little bit ago about how that came about, but explain like how this happened and what it means to you, because I knew you grew up being a Dave Matthews fan as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's all a little bit confusing how any of this happened, but apparently, the Black Pumas couldn't make it anymore, and it was just fell to us to fill in for them, and we're so honored and thrilled to be able to do it. I mean, I owned a Dave Matthews Band Live at the Gorge DVD when I was a kid. I remember always trying to figure out trips, how to get to the Gorge. Financially, it never made any sense. I didn't even really like know where it was. It just felt like this impossible place to get to. But and then eventually I kind of just gave up on the dream. But this just fell into our laps, and here we are, and we're just so thrilled to be able to do it.
Matt, I was telling Sam, I've never been to the Gorge before either. I'm coming this weekend. I'm very excited to see you guys. I'm very excited to see the venue. I'm really excited to see Dave Matthews Band. Dave Matthews Band also has a legendary record where they produced and put out a live record from Red Rocks, and you guys have played there as well. And so, Matt, I don't know if you've been to the Gorge, if you've ever experienced live music there before, but you have at Red Rocks. Can you compare and contrast and tell me about your excitement level for this weekend as well? I
mean, yeah, I'm really excited. The Gorge was probably the first, I went to the Gorge before I ever went to Red Rocks kind of thing. I went to Sasquatch Music Festival, which is like a now defunct music festival that they used to have at the Gorge. While I was in college, I made a trip out there, and, it's just a magical place. If anyone has a chance to get out there, it's a bucket list type music venue, just dramatic backdrop for a stage built into sort of a natural amphitheater, like a huge hill. Obviously, Red Rocks is incredible. It's its own special thing in a similar way. But one thing that jumps out to me is just about the Gorge is the scale. I think it holds like 30,000 people, on a hill overlooking this, cliff. And I think Red Rocks to scale is about 9,000. So, it's a good 3 times bigger than Red Rocks, which, Red Rocks is plenty daunting and spiritual and all that fun stuff too. So to imagine that many more people, it obviously speaks to what Dave has built. Everybody knows the career that band and himself have had. And it's pretty mind blowing to imagine that he's doing 3 nights at a place that holds 30,000 people. And that he's done it for a long time. This is not a new revelation for them. But yeah, I mean, hopefully that speaks to our excitement to be a part of something like that. Like Sam said, obviously grew up listening to Dave Matthews Band. He was so important to this area, to the Philly area. When I was in high school, it almost seemed like, it was one of those things where he was so big that I can't imagine anyone not, feeling the excitement to open for a Dave Matthews type concert. Like I don't know if I know anyone who went to school in the Philadelphia area I graduated in 2009 that wasn't like, this close to Dave Matthews Band, during that time.
Yeah, I mean, it almost became a running joke, right? Like, oh, you're a Dave Matthews Band fan too, because it was so prevalent and it was so everywhere. Sam and I were chatting. We were both in the warehouse, the fan club, and I'd go to every show when they would be in Camden, or they used to play the Vet when that was still around, and then one or two shows in the winter or fall. The Gorge, if people are not aware, it's in the Columbia River Valley, and so literally the Columbia River is behind the venue, and so they made a movie about it a couple of years ago. It's become in its own right sort of like a legendary venue like Red Rocks or places along those lines. And then after that, you guys are back here in Philadelphia. You're going to be September 10th, Skyline Stage at the Mann Center. So, it's been a pretty epic few weeks or months for you guys, wrapping up the tour, then opening up for Dave Matthews, and then playing a place like the Mann in front of a hometown crowd. Sam, you got to be psyched to be doing a show at the Mann and be back here in Philly.
I'm super excited. I just saw Fish at the Mann and it was life-changing. But no, I mean, it's always good to be back home in Philly. My parents are going to be there. Matt's parents are going to be there. A bunch of friends, family, everybody's going to be there. And yes, Philly has a certain energy for us that is unlike any other city in the world. So we're very excited to be back in Philly for sure.
Does it change the dynamic at all when you're playing in front of family, friends, people you grew up with? Do you change what you do on stage, or is it just you're doing your show?
I think in the past it had, because it feels silly. Like we get up there and we jump around and get weird and, sing songs and yell and scream and stuff and have fun. And so it is a little odd just to think about doing that in front of your mom or like the girl, I don't know, just whoever from high school or whatever it is. But I think after, a number of years of doing this, you do end up just getting into the zone and you kind of, in a way, forget where you are. So it does make it easier to just get weird and play a Mountjoy show for sure.
In a different way, but in similar fashion, I've been at the radio station for quite some time, and it's allowed me to reconnect with friends from Conestoga that I had just sort of left my life, and then they might hear me on MMR or on the Preston and Steve show or see this video, for example, and then they become a part of your life again. So maybe you guys will have people coming to the shows at the Mann that you might not have seen since graduation, or it's a weird, interesting reconnection to people from earlier parts in your life.
Yeah, no question. I think in some ways that can be really, really good. I'm thinking about, I live here in Fishtown, and I now frequent Johnny Brenda's, which was like, for any band that's building through Philadelphia, that's an important venue early on. And, I think back to our first show at Johnny Brenda's was like that. I was really excited, super nervous, in part because so many bands that I look up to had played Johnny Brenda's, and it felt like a moment, And then we walk in there and it's like the, 10-year high school reunion. Everyone's talking to each other, telling, you could almost like hear the conversations on stage, like, oh, it's been so long since I saw you, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And in some ways that's great, of course. But, it was like, I was expecting this magical musical endeavor, and it ends up being this like, Conestoga High School 5-year reunion or whatever it was. So it can go both ways. Now that we play bigger venues, which is, we're really fortunate. Like I probably won't hear those conversations. So I'm a little removed from it in a good way, but, yeah, it can be a lot, but it's also literally the dream. I literally, grew up here, going to shows, taking the train in and going to shows and to be able to be a part of the shows that people are maybe taking the train into from, schools like Conestoga or even from within the city is really special. We're
speaking with Matt Quinn and Sam Cooper here on MMR and, talking about those types of reunions. Tell me a little bit about some of your early gigs. Did you play on the main line? Was there ever a gig at the Berwyn Tavern or places where, you might have gone when you were in your young 20s?
We played at the Griffin, right? The Griffin Cafe on 30.
Yeah.
There was always like someone making loud coffee or something in the background, and you could barely hear anything.
Right next to the movie theater in Wayne.
Yeah. But that was a vibe. That was like where kids went for open mics. We played Milk Boy, of course, in Ardmore. I'm sure there's other places. Oh, what was the place, Matt, on 252? Burlap and Bean? Is that what it was? I don't know if that still exists, but
yeah, that place, like, some of the places that he's naming, and people who are making music and writing songs and know about this stuff, I'm sure it's still the same way. It was like kind of tough to there was some politics even at that level
oh my God, yeah.
To get into the right slots and make sure you were able to play your song that you had written for your 14-year-old girlfriend. But I remember that Burlap and Bean was pretty good. They had like an actual system that was a little more, made it a little easier to get some time and to play. So yeah, we would, it was 252. I forget exactly where it was, but I do remember, actually that was one of the first ones where they gave us more than 5 minutes, and we really were able to spread our wings for 10 minutes.
there was an open mic. It wasn't in Philly. It was in New York that Matt and I did. And I think they allowed for 5 minutes or something. And we played one song, and then we were in the middle of the second song, and then we were in the middle of it. And this woman comes on stage and just claps us off the stage. This was 10 years ago, more than that maybe. But yeah, open mics are tough, but it's the way to do it, I guess.
So the first record was Mountjoy. The second record, Rearrange Us. And then the record that came out this year is called Orange Blood. I'm really enjoying it. And an interesting thing happened for me this morning. I'd been listening to the record in my headphones most of the time, either at work or on my phone or whatever. And today, and I have to be at work at 5 a.m. Today I drove in and I put the record back on, and the song Ruins came on. And I love that song, but it was the first time I'd heard it in the car. And to me, when you hear a song in the car and you find yourself turning it up and maybe going a little bit faster, that's the mark of a really good song. And there's a part 2.5 minutes in where the keys kick in and there's a really great melody, and it turns into a really cool jam. So I don't know if it's part of your set list lately, but I love that song. Matt, can you tell me a little bit about what your impressions are of the song Ruins?
Yeah. That's a song we've had for a really long time. Actually, truly one of the first Mountjoy songs. I think I went back not long ago, and I have all these voice notes, and it was from the same period as Astrovan. But like you said, it has this sort of jam at the end. And I think over the years, the biggest thing for us is that, we were kind of thrown together as a band by some songs. So we weren't this band that had been jamming together in the garage for 10 years and then we got our break. So the Ruins was a song I feel where we weren't quite ready as a band. We weren't good enough at, jamming together, or didn't have the understanding that song required. So we actually tried to put it on the second record. And, it just was this thing where we knew it was a special tune, and it didn't quite give us that sort of, turn it up in your car vibe. It didn't have that yet. And this record, that's a pretty live take, that jam. And we went out to Los Angeles and got in a room, and, we had played it live actually a few times years ago, and had some success with the jam and stuff like that. And yeah, it's just a cool, it's a song I really like, but I think it's also a cool sort of personification of the band's growth, in terms of becoming more of a band that jams more and is a little more experimental as we start to understand each other. And then the sort of unspoken language that playing in a band for that long starts to become.
So I guess the song itself, and I love this when you discover a new song or a new record, even if it's an older song, songs have a life of their own, right? And so for you guys, it had been around for a while, but it never quite fit. And did it take your own growth or a combination of a little bit of tweaks to it to finally put it on this record? You explained some of it, but is it just it was the right place at the right time for that song in particular?
I think so. I think part of it too is we don't think of ourselves anyway as a singles band. In terms of, let's just put the 10 best songs, even if they all sound exactly the same, and just see if MMR will pick up one of them and cross our fingers and whatever it is. For us, it's we really feel from the beginning. Like, we want to make albums. That's what we grew up listening to, whether it's Dave Matthews Band or Beatles or whatever. These people that I think really perfected the art of making a full album. And for example, on the second record too, we had a song called Let Loose, which if people go and listen to it and they compare it to Ruins, it's just a really similar structured tune. And another tune that I really love. And when we put them on the record side by side, along with the other stuff that we're talking about, we felt like Ruins could be better, which I think we ultimately got there, which I'm excited. But it also just is too similar. It was too much of like, people were going to be like, isn't that just a different take on that song? And I think that's a big part of it too, is like, when people dive in with our music, hopefully they realize that, like, the 10 songs that we choose or however many are on the record is very specific to curating, whatever it is, 40 minutes of music that we feel like represents what we're trying to do, so it means that sometimes good songs don't make it just because they sound too much like another song.
Yeah, Sam, I'm a record guy. I like listening to albums beginning to end. I like them in the order that they are on the record. I don't know if that's personal taste or if it's because I'm 47 years old, but it's cool to hear guys that are a little bit younger than me feel the same way that I do when it comes to presenting music, right? And so, like, when you're putting out a record and then you're going to take it out and play it live, I think it's important to listen to it as an entity. The record has its own life, and the songs place on those records and the songs' similarities to other songs also have their place. Would you agree with that?
Oh, for sure. Both musically and like narratively. I know Matt's pretty specific about, speaking about this topic in this way. It wouldn't make any sense to speak about the same topic in a different way in the next song, or like even live. The way we put together set lists is to try to create a journey, try to create ups and downs that, build tension and release and make sense as a whole. And so I think the albums for us have been the same way, where you kind of look at these songs and you're like, okay, what's the best way to take this journey through these 10 tracks or whatever it is? And if it doesn't fit, then maybe you make a transition or you add a different song or whatever it is. But yeah, it's very intentional for sure. And yeah, of course, we grew up on, like the White Album, even different. Yeah. Like, speaking of Dave Matthews Band, like, those albums are a journey. There's ups and downs. So just trying to emulate our heroes like that as best as we can, because I think that creates the best way to listen to music. For sure. There's
a segue on Crash from number 41 into Say Goodbye. And I like, if I'm listening to the song number 41, I have to hear Say Goodbye after, because those songs flow together.
And I know for a fact, like, when they play they don't do it every time, but a lot of times they'll do that live because it's such a beautiful marriage of these songs where they can just kind of interweave them. And then all of a sudden you're in the next song. Grateful Dead, of course, is like, one of the best ever at doing that. And so just trying to emulate those things live too, I think has upped our live show for sure.
For whatever it's worth, I also really love the song Lemon Tree. I think it just sounds terrific. It's a cool, in my mind anyway, whole band sound. And so I don't know if that will be played live this weekend, but if it's on the set list, I'm looking forward to hearing that one in live and in person as well.
Yeah,
I
think that'll make an appearance, I believe. Yeah,
very cool. Well, I want to thank Matt Quinn, Sam Cooper, lead vocalist and lead guitarist from the band Mountjoy, born and raised right here in Philadelphia, and now making waves really around the country, internationally as well, of course. And this weekend at the Gorge in outside of Seattle, Washington, in George, Washington. And if you're lucky enough to ever get to the Gorge, I'm looking forward to seeing that for the first time, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you guys there. And then back here in Philadelphia, September 10 at the Skyline Stage at the Mann Center right here in Philadelphia. So Matt, Sam, thank you guys so much for spending some time with me, and thanks for speaking with us here on MMR.
Thanks so much for having us. We appreciate it. This is fun for us.
Thank you so much.
We'll see you this weekend.
All right.
Thanks, fellas. Talk to you again soon.
Bye.